We've been sort of working with the teachers to design what these 2 days would look like, and our role as GenWise mentors has largely been to provide support wherever the teachers, sort of needed some input. So, for instance, if they had to design, if they had to think of ways to collect data, for instance, and so, could we do, what are the instruments we could use? Could we do surveys? Could we do interviews with people? Or, for instance, what kind of experiments should be set up? How can we try some of these experiments? And also to expand a little bit on problem-based learning and to sort of think of it as a learning process. And particularly with children, and particularly today, I think we're always looking for solutions, but that the whole journey of even thinking through the problem is part of the PBL, is very much a part of the PBL process. So we've tried to sort of look at it from, how do you think scientifically about this? What is the process of scientific thinking? So bringing that into, so that's been some of the work that we've been doing in very close collaboration with the teachers. It's an interesting challenge because one, at the level that we are looking at, say middle school or even high school, you want children to have a very sound understanding of the concepts of what we traditionally call different subjects, because there is a uniqueness to a concept in physics and chemistry and biology. But it's a challenge because given where the children's future is, given where we are and where the children's future is, it is imperative that they understand the relationships between, that you see a concept across subjects. So you don't say this is a physics concept, this is a chemistry concept. So as a mentor and as a teacher, it's very challenging because you yourself have to internalize it first. You have to accept that we came from silos, but that today we have to look at science as this. We have to take an issue, we have to take a theme. But how do you break it down to children? That is the challenge. How do you break it down into concepts that they can understand while meta-thinking? I like to call it from the microscope to the telescope. But that is a challenge because you have to really come up with examples and activities which allows them to experience that without losing the rigor of the subject. The fun of learning is in the challenge, for sure, but then there are certain practical realities. That's right. So how do you overcome those practical realities while enjoying the process of discovering this whole interdisciplinarity? Because as you teach children, you learn a lot. You have to, meaning, unless, and in order to make these interdisciplinary connections explicit to children, you as a teacher really have to learn, which is where I think the excitement is, because you're discovering things about a subject that you have studied and you thought you knew. You're suddenly discovering these connections which you didn't see earlier, which means you have to study, which means you have to. So it is a challenge, but it also is up to you. If you look at it as an exciting phase of your life, and if you think of yourself as a lifelong learner, it is exciting. But how do you balance that with the realities of a school system, a timetable, an examination, and a board? I think that is the challenging part, but the excitement has to be there. Otherwise, you can't convey to the children. You always have to push the envelope given where we are today and where we are going into the future. If you don't push the envelope, which may be uncomfortable at the time of pushing, but there is a long-term impact of that. It can be extremely uncomfortable at the time of pushing. The way I see it, I don't think you have a choice. None of us have a choice. But more so as an educational institution, you use different frameworks, you use different forms of learning, you use different experiences to do the best that you can to equip children with the ability to deal with the unpredictability of the future. How do you do that? You have to constantly, but at the same time, I think to support the children, and I think that's what Inventure does, is this kind of, you always have to, it's like you have to support in a challenging situation, particularly children, you have to hold them in a challenging situation. So I think that's where Inventure's ability to hold through the multiple things it does, all kinds of activities children do, and the environment where child is central, right? So I don't think you have a choice. If you don't push the envelope, you're not going to equip, you're not going to sort of bring up a generation of children who can deal with the challenges of the future. And these are all children from very privileged backgrounds. So also to give them exposure to the realities of life, because they may never see it again in their lives. So I think, trying to get that balance is what Inventure is trying to do, from what I understand, is to get them to understand the realities of life, but at the same time, equip them with the ability to use their privilege. When we say the real world, it is, you are anyway experiencing it on a day-to-day basis. When you commute, you live in a city like Bangalore, you're experiencing it as a child for sure. But the point is, how do you understand it? Because you can be in your car, you can look out of the window, you can see that, but you're not experiencing any of that. So how do you place children in a safe position, but at the same time also push them to think about it? I mean, I see some of the work that was done through the changemakers, because I had an opportunity to be a judge on that. And I see some of the children had really done some very serious thinking about, not just thinking, but also going out, talking to people, surveys, understanding, and then using that information. So while privilege allows you to just be a spectator sometimes, if you, as a school, if you can create that environment, I mean, any school or any parent can create an environment where the child actually is able to engage with it. Put yourself in a position where you really understand what is going on to the extent you can. I think that is where a real world experience actually happens. But like you said, as a parent or even as an adult who engages with children, I always have to be, I have to push it far enough that the child experiences the reality, but also because they're not equipped. There is also their own reality from where they come, the kind of backgrounds they come from. So to say, okay, here is a cushion, here is a support, but go out a little bit more and empathize. Think about, other people as well. So this ability to empathize, to understand, all that is part of the real world experience. Otherwise, you stay in the intellect. You understand it intellectually, but you don't understand it emotionally. And I think that is where we need to sort of, for me, that is the real world experience most of the time. No, actually, it doesn't. Yeah, because, I think it's also your approach to life. For me, largely it is being in the moment, but always knowing that there is hope and possibilities in life. So it doesn't sit heavily because you don't take it on as this huge responsibility that you are taking on. You're part of a larger community. You're part of a larger group. You work together. You collaborate. So as long as you're thinking of yourself as a part of a community and not you as the individual, yes, there are times of deep angst and there are times of deep disturbance looking at what's happening around you. But as long as you think about life having hope and possibilities and look for those, it doesn't sit heavily at all for me. For me, the message I always have for anybody actually is experience life, find opportunities, don't be afraid, but be pragmatic. Know certain practical realities, but please get out there and experience life. And look for hope and possibilities. I mean, if you don't do that, then